Hey guys, Sneaky Snake here, Brothers in Arms, World of Warships. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Tier 8 American heavy cruiser, the New Orleans. I'm playing here on the map Two Brothers by myself, and it is a Tier 8 game. So, this replay, the damage total is going to be pretty healthy for New Orleans. The XP and credits and all that stuff is going to be pretty good. This is one of my better games in this ship to date. But more so, I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys a little bit here before the action gets going about the state of the New Orleans and American high-tier cruisers in general. Obviously, the Tier 10 Des Moines is a pretty strong vessel, and it excels at getting in close and using its armor and its extremely fast rate of fire on its 203mm guns to be able to citadel cruisers and even battleships at point-blank range, absolutely annihilate destroyers with its radar, and just be a brawling, tanky kind of ship. However, the Baltimore and the preceding New Orleans at Tiers 9 and 8, respectively, don't necessarily get you prepared for what you need to do in the Des Moines. Obviously, these ships, the Baltimore and the New Orleans, have pretty good AA relative to their tier. They also are armored, at least on paper, pretty well for their tier, and they have decent performing guns. But once you start to unravel, in this case, the New Orleans, and kind of look at it compared to its contemporaries here at Tier 8, it's really the lamest duck of them all, to be honest with you. This ship has the dreaded curse on its armament of both having a long reload and also having some very lazy shell arcs. These things, they just travel through the air. Now, just at an incredibly slow rate. Now, it's nothing like an Atlanta or an American destroyer. It's definitely over 800 meters a second. I don't have the exact number out in front of me, but compared to the Chapayev, compared to the Admiral Hipper, compared to even the ship like the Mogami, this thing has the lowest shell velocity of any of the Tier 8 heavy cruisers, and, you know, it's just not very good when you're trying to shoot at long ranges. And you compound that with a reload that is about 14 seconds, and you just have a ship that is never going to be doing a crap load of damage. Getting over 100,000 damage in this ship is quite the achievement for any player on any map, under any matchmaker circumstances, and this thing just does not stack up very well to higher tier matchmaking. Obviously, you know, ships like the Tirpitz are really good in Tier 10 games. They still have the armor and they still have the torpedoes. You know, a ship like the Mogami in a Tier 8 game can still do pretty well. Even a Chapayev, with its ability to stealth fire, is going to do okay. Heck, I'd even toss an Admiral Hipper or a Prinz Eugen, the Tier 8 premium and 9 premium German heavy cruisers, as being able to punch above their weight to a limited degree in a high tier game. However, in the New Orleans, yeah, it's just not very good at all. And the armor on paper is about 130 millimeters along the Citadel. Yeah, this thing gets Citadeled very, very easily. And even against 8-inch armor piercing from other cruisers, you'd think, well, yeah, that's all right. If you get bow in, you'll be able to bounce some stuff. Yeah, your bow armor is okay, but it's just, there's just something about this ship where it just doesn't seem like it matters what the angle you're giving to the enemy ship is, they're going to be able to Citadel you. Enough of that anyway. We're going to get on to the gameplay here, and I'll keep mentioning the New Orleans as the video progresses, but I digress. We got some enemy ships that are moving up here closer to the island along the 4 line. And what I wanted to do here at this beginning part of the game is I wanted to get into a nice position right here and be able to use my radar for any enemy destroyers that might be trying to lurk around and get to where the capture point would be if we were playing domination. However, I see that there's a Bismarck that's making a very bold charge right up through the middle, and it would be within my best interests to not be sitting bow on to him as he comes around the corner. And I don't think he really understands what's waiting for him around here. There's a Belfast and Eisenhower. We got a New Mexico in the back. There's an Alba moving up, myself, of course, and then another battleship that's just off my stern, the Bayern. So I think this Bismarck is trying to bite off a little bit more than he can chew. Now, if there is one good thing about the shell arcs on the New Orleans and American cruisers, New Orleans and Baltimore, is that since they have such lazy shell arcs, and actually, I suppose I should include the Des Moines as well. They have such lazy shell arcs that doing something like that, shooting over the island, where that would have just been completely impossible in any of the other Tier 8 cruisers, at least in terms of the shell velocity. Maybe the Edinburgh, you know, the Edinburgh bro. Just kidding. But I don't think any of the other Tier 8 cruisers would have been able to do that, as I get a 2500 hit here on the Bismarck and set my first fire of the game. Now, one thing about the high explosive here on the New Orleans is that it's very lackluster. The fire chance is decent. I think it's 12 or 13% base, so you can get it up to a pretty respectable fire chance. But when you consider that the New Orleans with a demolition expert has roughly the same fire chance as the Chapayev, and the Chapayev has more guns, and although they're lower caliber, they shoot farther, and they have a better shell velocity, and they reload faster. And now you're starting to see how, at least in a 1v1, a Chapayev would be able to eat this thing alive without really having too much of an issue in being able to defeat it. 7,600 damage here on the Bismarck. He did put out my fire as his damage control was still going when my shells impacted, but I continue to shoot him down, just trying to whittle away his hit points. And you can see here when battleships get bow in, and even when their superstructure isn't necessarily raked with fire, you'll get a lot of shells that just don't penetrate, or that they deal very minimal damage. Now these planes are coming in torpedo and dive bomber, so I decided to use my defensive fire AA. Now, the defensive fire AA on the New Orleans is very good, and you can see here I've already shot down 4 planes in a very quick succession, and those torpedo planes were not able to get the best of salvos off on the Byron. Unfortunately, though, he is going to take, it looks like 3 or no, maybe 4. He is going to die, unfortunately. But the Ryuho's planes, I felt like I did enough to help out in that situation. The range on the New Orleans isn't the best, although it has very good DPS. I believe the majority of its anti-aircraft defenses have range of under 5 kilometers, which, quite frankly, for an escort cruiser is not necessarily the best. Now, you're going to see here we have an Otago, and we have a Hipper out in front of me. And you're going to see how, even though I'm kind of kiting away, this isn't necessarily in the best interest of me. I do land a 4,300 point salvo there on the Hipper, start a fire and break a couple modules. But, yeah, kiting away and treating it like you would a Chapayev or something like that is not necessarily a good idea, because your shells still take a very long time to get to the target. What you really want to do is find the sweet spot for range-wise on this ship, and that, at least for me, seems to be about 10 to 12 kilometers. Once you start getting down to about 10 kilometers, the shell arcs and the shell speed kind of go out the window, and it's not necessarily a big issue. Now, I am a pretty accurate shot. I think my career hit rate is 37%, and of course, cruisers are going to be slightly higher than that because of the ranges that you fight at, tier for tier throughout the game. So it's not bad. You can see here I'm getting some decent shots downrange on the Colorado. I hit 3-4 shells for every broadside, which is not bad. It's at 13.5 kilometers that I've mainly been shooting at. But now you're going to see here, this is one example where I guess a New Orleans would be more powerful than all the other cruisers here in the game. Now, I'm loading on my armor piercing as I was anticipating this Otago to continue to turn in, and you're going to see right here the power of American armor piercing. If there is one really good thing about these shells, is that they have an incredible ability to punch through armor at very thick angles. Right there, get about 2,500 points of damage, and while that doesn't seem very good, I highly doubt that any of the other cruisers shooting their 2 or 3 millimeters would have even been able to register over 1,000. The Otago does have pretty decent side armor. I come to almost a complete stop and shoot yet another broadside at the Otago, and there we go, 12,300. I think that Otago is going to start paying more attention. 5 shells hit, 2 overpens, and then of course 1 Citadel, so he continues to turn in more towards me, and I'm waiting for the shot, waiting. I'm not shooting while he's bowing, and then as soon as he gives me about a 20-degree angle or so, I aim right at the bow, and I give the front guns a shot. Unfortunately, a few shells hit the island, shells fall in. I do manage to get yet another Citadel, 6,200 points of damage, and unfortunately, I'm not able to get the kill, but my buddy behind me in the Belfast takes out the Otago. So we have a 2 to 5 ship advantage right now, 525 to 240, up to 55,000 points of damage with 2 fires and 2 Citadels off of 85 shells hit. So now I'm going to get back to the high explosive as I shoot to get the guns cleared of armor piercing. Now, like I mentioned, something about the New Orleans is that it has a 14-second reload, which is not the best. So whatever you have in the guns, do not afford yourself don't afford the enemy the opportunity of switching your ammo when you have the guns fully loaded. You just do not have the fire rate to be able to switch ammo types on the Jiffy like you would in a Chapayev or on Mogami shooting 155mm guns. I do set a fire on the Colorado, do about 4,000 points of damage. Shells are inbound on me, and 5,200 damage taken. Not too bad. It could have certainly been worse. He shoots his 4 guns out at me. I'm swinging in. Now, another good thing about the New Orleans is both when you're facing to the front and when you're facing aft, this thing has incredible gun angles. I believe it's less than 30 degrees to be able to get your full broadside going. 5,200 damage there with a fire set. And once again, you can see I'm within that 10 to 12 kilometer range. I was able to get some extremely good shots there on the Otago, and I was also able to get some very efficient high explosive fire on this Colorado. Get yet another high explosive broadside, and a few of the shells are going to hit the island right at the top, but I miss. Okay, never mind. 73,000 points of damage with just under 9 minutes played in the game thus far. And once again, you can see here I'm able to shoot over that island that's in front of me maybe 5 kilometers due to the very lazy shell arcs. So this is definitely something to take advantage of. And although I am not a fan of lazy shell arcs on cruisers, this is something that you have to learn how to do in the New Orleans. So then when you get to the Baltimore and then the Des Moines, and I guess even on the Pensacola too, you're not going to be missing all of your shots. I get a high explosive broadside down range at the Cleveland. Once again, I decided not to load AP, and I get the high explosive out, not wishing to clear the barrels. I do manage one hit, does not do any damage, and the Cleveland is starting to get on my comfortable range. And quite frankly, when the ships are over 13 kilometers, even 14 kilometers, if you're trying to get undetected and you're trying to reassess the situation and maybe get yourself in a better position, then I highly suggest not to shoot. Another good thing about the New Orleans, however, is that the concealment range is pretty good without Concealment Expert on this ship, on your captain. This thing has about 10.8 kilometers on its detectability without the concealment perk on your captain, so it's pretty good. And when you get it on your captain, you'll be able to get it down below 10 kilometers, and boy, do I keep saying captain a lot. Oops, sorry about that. The two forward guns, of high explosive gun downrange of the Colorado, and I managed to get the kill. So the first kill of the game for me, that Tier 7 American battleship. 115 shell hits, make that 119. 5 fires, 4 planes shot down, 2 citadels, and 1 ship destroyed. 83,000 points of damage. If I were to die right now, this would actually be a pretty healthy result in the New Orleans, but there's still plenty more to do. We do have 3 enemy destroyers that are still left on the opposing team, and the carrier, and of course this Cleveland. Now you can see here, this is not a strength of an American cruiser. Trying to shoot at long range on ships that are running away from you. It's a very, very bad idea. The Gneisenau does take out the Cleveland, so I don't know if any of my shells hit, but we have a commanding lead of 649 to 179. The enemy team only has 4 ships left, while we still have 9. So at this point, instead of heading directly for the enemy base, in a few seconds, I believe, I don't recall exactly, there's going to be a destroyer. Yep, there we go. The Hachisaharu is going to be making his way up the middle channel. So at this point, I decide, all right, you know what? I'm going to go help out. He's certainly going to continue his run down the middle. And then maybe when I get over to the channel, I'll go down the mid. Now, I know, really quickly, something a little off topic here, there's a lot of people that think going down the middle on Two Brothers is a very good idea at the early stages of the game. That is absolutely correct. It is a horrible idea. However, once the battle progresses a little bit, and let's say you're playing domination, going down the middle can actually be very advantageous to your team, and it can actually decide matches. I've seen it before where ships push down the middle to try and get an extra cap or surprise some enemy ships that weren't expecting it. Now, it generally happens in games when there is not an aircraft carrier present, so of course there's not all the planes flying around, and a lot of aircraft carriers are very vigilant, and they do send their planes to the entrances to the channel along the 5 and 6 line to make sure that nobody's trying to be sneaky when they're doing that at the beginning of the game. But at the mid and late part of the game, it's actually a pretty decent tactic. However, unfortunately for the Hachisaharu, he's been spotted the entire time, and we have a commanding lead. So there is absolutely no way that he's going to be getting anybody with torpedoes when he breaks through the mouth of the channel. So what you've seen so far in the New Orleans is lazy shell arcs, somewhat iffy damage with both high explosive and armor piercing when they're angled completely at you, but you can also see how very good the armor piercing is whenever they provide you with about 20, maybe 25 degrees. It really punches through the armor, and it's very nice. And again, that's something, it's difficult to get a good reading on how consistent you're going to be playing the New Orleans, because you have to get to those very uncomfortable ranges. Quite frankly, 10 to 12 kilometers for a cruiser at high tiers is extremely close range. Battleships that are known and notorious for their inaccuracy, like German ones, the Bismarck and the Tirpitz, will easily be able to land citadel after citadel on you without too much of a sweat. I get a full broadside of high explosive on the Hachisaharu. Obviously, he was detected coming around the corner, and there we go. A nice solid 4,600 damaging hit with his torpedo tubes getting knocked out. 5 out of the 9 shells hit, so pretty good. The Hachisaharu is now turning to try and avoid the shells from the Belfast, which he takes a couple, and I'm waiting for him to beach so that he comes to a complete stop. His torpedoes do come out, and I get my full broadside out. Unfortunately, he hit the island so fast that he was able to go backwards quite as good as well, but I still do 2,400 points, and the Gneisenau or the torpedo planes looks like they're going to take care of business. And who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? It's the Independence. There we go. The Belfast wasn't able to steal the kill with 700 damage, unfortunately. So 90,000 points of damage with 6 minutes and 22 seconds left in the game. So the New Orleans, I guess in a nutshell, is one of those cruisers that it excels at being a support cruiser and nothing more. It has the radar, and it has the defensive AA to take care of aircraft and destroyers, but that's it. You're never going to beat a Mogami, assuming the captains know what they're doing in a 1v1. You're never going to beat an Admiral Hipper. You're never going to beat a Chapayev, a Mikhail Kutuzov, an Atago. This is clearly the weakest ship in the Tier 8 cruiser in the game right now, and something interesting to note, there's a lot of talk going around on the forums about a potential United States Navy light and heavy cruiser branch that is supposedly coming out sometime in 2017, this year. So, or next year, I guess. Yeah, this video is going to come out before the 1st. So next year. And an interesting note, this is a little bit of a historical thing, but I think you guys might be interested in it. The New Orleans was the last of the treaty cruisers designed. Now, for those of you that are not aware, the 1922 Washington Naval Treaty and the subsequent 1930 and 36 amendments to the treaty stipulated that there are 2 classes of cruisers at that time, light and heavy. Heavy cruisers had to be no more than 10,000 tons, and they could mount guns of up to 8 inches. Light cruisers also had the tonnage limit set at 10,000, but they could not have guns bigger than 6 inches, so 155, I believe, and 152, something like that, and then 203 millimeters respectively. The New Orleans was the last treaty cruiser, so again, she had to conform to the 10,000 ton and 8-inch gun limit. And other Tier 8 cruisers that are in the game are the Admiral Hipper, of course, which is not a treaty cruiser. The Mogami, which was built as a ruse to be a treaty cruiser with the 15 155mm guns, but ended up being upgunned to 10 203mm, which you can do in the game, and it is also not a treaty cruiser. The Chapayev and the Mikhail Kutuzov are not treaty cruisers. What I'm getting at here is that there's not a single cruiser at Tier 8 that is a treaty cruiser, except for the New Orleans. And I think that's the reason why it suffers, because it doesn't have torpedoes, it has slow reloading guns, and it has less of them compared to its counterparts. And while the Admiral Hipper does have less guns, it has better armor piercing at range, and honestly, its high explosive is not as bad either. Oh yeah, and it gets torpedoes. So you can't get into like close quarters knife fighting ranges with this thing, because you have to worry about enemy torpedoes as well. And it's something that, well, I mean, I guess you can, but you have to be very careful. All I'm getting at here is I think the New Orleans would be better off if they did decide to do the split at Tier 7, downgrade at 1 tier. Because at Tier 7 you have other cruisers that are not treaty cruisers like the York, for instance. And it just doesn't seem like that it's doing very well. The win rate, it's the worst win rate of any Tier 8 cruiser. Worst average damage. I believe it's also the worst average kills a game. It's just average XP. It's just not a very good ship where it's at in the game. And I'm not saying that you can't do good in it. Obviously, this result that I'm having right now is very nice indeed. And it's certainly going to be a good game in terms of credits and XP and all that. But I just feel like the New Orleans is tiered up one too many. And if we want to be even more of a nerd, the New Orleans isn't even, you know, the Admiral Hipper wasn't a response to the New Orleans. The Baltimore would be compared favorably to the Baltimore, which I think would be a better Tier 8. And I just think if they move them down just a little bit, 1 tier apiece, I think it'd be great. But then some people might say the Pensacola would be OP at Tier 6. Yeah, I know, right? A Pensacola OP. Everybody thinks that thing is crap. Anyway, back to the gameplay. I managed to use my radar on the Leningrad, got some nice hits into him, and I'm looking for the kill shot here. Full broadside out of the front guns. Unfortunately, I think I am just a bit too far behind. He does turn to his port side, and I miss. And I was kind of getting upset with myself because I really wanted this kill. I found him with the radar. I got the damage done on him, and I'm looking for the final kill shot. Get my forward gun jet out again. I aim farther ahead of the Leningrad, and as he turns back to his port side, the shells slam into the target. Pick up the second kill of the game. 97,000 points of damage done, 134 target hits, and the torpedoes will pass harmlessly by. One other thing I forgot to mention, the New Orleans does have the best in-class rudder shift time. It's like 6 seconds or something ridiculous, and the best turning circle. It's below 600 meters, I know that. It's down near 500 meters, to be honest with you, and it creates a situation where you're easily able to torpedo beat to pretty much any type of torpedo that gets dropped on you. So now I'm going to farm some easy damage here on this Ryuho, get a nice solid 4,600 points, but was that really solid? Because I have a feeling if that was a Mogami or a Hipper or a Chapayev, I would have done way more there. And I'm actually not going to be able to get the kill on the Ryuho because the guns, they're just not getting that meaty damage. Score the Confederates, 6,000 on the armor piercing, not too bad, up to 108,000 points of damage, 620 to 326. It's a battle between me and the Belfast to try and get this last kill. Get another broadside out, this one, a high explosive shell is falling in, and there we go, 4,600. But again, it's just not the raw meaty damage. And I know I'm shooting at a Bowen cruiser, I get that, but you'd think that it would be doing a lot more because these are 203s and I'm shooting at a very soft skinned cruiser. Full broadside of AP out, and I managed to do 460 with 2 shells that ricochet off the front. So even American armor piercing shooting at Bowen carriers, yeah, this is that angle that you're seeing right there. That's the only way to keep yourself safe from American AP. Another full broadside out of American AP. There we go, 5,600 points of damage. And unfortunately, before the guns get reloaded, because I don't have the rate of fire and he's burning in more than one place, the Belfast shells come flying in and he takes the kill, ending a game here in the New Orleans on the map Two Brothers. Alrighty guys, taking a look now at the post-battle results. 334,000 credits received, 6,500 total XP with a Confederate, 125,000 points of damage done, 164 target hits, 4 planes shot down, 2 ships destroyed, the Leningrad and the Colorado, 6 fire set, 2 citadels, and 3 secondary hits as well. Taking a look at the team score, 2,145 base XP, and not damage-wise, but base XP-wise, this is my best game that I've had in this ship to date. So a very solid result as a top tier in this New Orleans, but overall, it's a very disappointing ship, and I really enjoyed my Pensacola. I know there's probably going to be someone in the comments that's going to be like, are you sniffing coke? Are you high there, Sneaky Snake? But I really enjoyed the Pensacola a lot more than this ship, and although it gets more tools to deal with, or to work with, I should say, like radar and supposedly better armor and supposedly better performing guns, this thing is very underwhelming, and it would be great to see Wargaming do something about it. Not saying that you can't have good results like this, but you really have to work for it. With that being said, the Sneaky Snake here for Brothers in Arms World of Warships signing off. Guys, have a great day, and I'll catch you later.